everybody. Good morning and welcome. Welcome to the Western Wall Tunnels. I'm Sharon. Now let's get everybody in first. Hold on. And before we start. Here we go. Okay. Okay, so good morning everybody and welcome to the Western Wall Tunnels. I'm Sharon. I'm going to be your guide on the journey back several thousand years in Jerusalem's history. I'd like to start with a legend. Okay? We have two brothers and they have farms next to each other, which they farm together. The older brother has a family, the younger brother doesn't. Every year they bring wheat to what we call a threshing floor. It's a place where you separate between the part you eat and the part you throw away. But each brother has his own storehouse. One year, the older brother worries about his little brother because he says, my wife works with me, my children will support me, but my brother has no one. I'm going to take some of my wheat tonight and I'm going to sneak it to his storehouse. So he goes to do that. But meanwhile, his little brother is also worried. He says, I just have to feed me, but my brother has all of these children. How is he going to manage? I'm going to take some of my wheat tonight and I'm going to sneak it to his storehouse. So you can imagine what happens. The place the two brothers meet and give each other a big hug is right here, the top of Mount Moriah. According to Jewish tradition, the place that what we call the foundation stone is, the place we believe creation began. What does that mean? Separation between heaven and earth. Okay, before we go on, what are we looking at here? Let's have a look. We have a model. Make sure everybody can see. I know it's a little bit crowded. It's a model of the area around the Temple Mount of today. So you have north, south, east, and west. I'm looking for a place for you to lean on. Do you want to come forward and lean on the model? That's okay. There you go. Okay. Has anyone here been to David City?
Yes.
Yes. So that's here. It's outside the walls today, and we're going to talk about it in a moment. Okay. You know what? Many, many events happen on Mount Moriah. But I want to talk about one of them in particular. We have Abraham. And he's coming this way from the south. And because he's an important guy, he has with him servants, and he has donkeys, and he's looking for somewhere in the land of Moriah that God's going to show him, but he doesn't yet know where it is. Now, the commentaries we have say, you know what? He sees a mountain which has a big cloud around it. He can see it, and Isaac can see it, but the servants have no idea what they're talking about. So he understands and leaves them at the bottom to go up. He's on his way to what we call the binding of Isaac, because he's about to sacrifice his son. Is that what happens? Does he really sacrifice his son? No. God doesn't want human sacrifice. He wants us to listen to him. What does get sacrificed that day on Mount Moriah? Does anybody remember?
A ram.
A ram. That ram caught in its horns gives us a symbol of what we call the shofar in Judaism. You hear that a lot now because we blow it every day until the end of the high holidays. And all of that takes place on top of Mount Moriah. So again, a very important place. Okay, jumping ahead to King David. King David, 1000 BCE, conquers Jerusalem, and Jerusalem's down here. It's a hilltop. It's surrounded by valleys. One of those valleys comes all the way up alongside Mount Moriah. They're actually opening it up this week as a special pilgrimage site, as a special tourist site. King David, later in his life, does something he's not supposed to do. All right, let's be fair. He does a number of things he's not supposed to do. In this case, he counts everybody. He holds a census. And God says, you weren't to do that. You're going to be punished, but I'm going to let you choose. Oh, that's a good deal. Let's see what the choices are. 3 years of a famine, and we like to point out that the past year was a drought year in this country, so we know about famine. 3 months where his enemies will pursue him, or 3 days of a plague or a sickness. So what would you choose? So he chooses the sickness, but we know about plagues, very unfortunately because of Corona. The Bible says 70,000 deaths. And King David, knowing that it's his fault, pleads with God to take it out not on the people, but on him and on his descendants. He's told to do something rather interesting. Buy the threshing floor. It belongs to this guy called Arvona. First of all, who is this? It turns out he's the king who David conquered to take the city in the first place. So he buys the threshing floor, offers a sacrifice. You know what happens to the plague? It stops, which you have to admit is a lot easier than what we all went through with Corona. Where's the threshing floor? On top of Mount Moriah. David has just done something interesting. He has bought the future site of the temple. But even though David brings the ark to Jerusalem, which he makes his capital, even though he's told to build a house for the Ark of the Covenant, I've never heard of David's temple. I've heard of Solomon's temple. I think we got a problem here. The reason that David is not allowed to build a temple is very interesting. He has blood on his hands, and therefore he isn't permitted. But his son Solomon is permitted. Now, we don't have a model of Solomon's temple, but for the demonstrations, I like to use that. And we'll see in a moment what that is. Solomon's temple, the Bible says, very beautiful, lasts for more than 400 years. And then from what's today Iraq, what was then Babylonia, along comes a king called Nebuchadnezzar. And Nebuchadnezzar conquers the country, enters Jerusalem, conquers the city, and down goes Solomon's beautiful temple. Many people into exile in Babylonia. So the good news is that history changes, and a new empire comes and takes over the Babylonian Empire, that's the Persians, encouraging Jews to go back. So 70 years after the first temple is destroyed, the second one, rebuilt by what we call the returnees to Zion, is dedicated. It's kind of modest, but that's going to change over the time. We're going to jump the history a little bit. Along come the Maccabees eventually, and the Maccabees enhance the temple, make it wider, make it more beautiful. And then, in the first century BCE, we have an interesting guy. Why do we have him? Because the Romans, seizing an opportunity when two Maccabee brothers are fighting over the kingship, take over the area, and they have a local guy who they trust. And his name is Herod the Great. So what does he do? So first of all, Herod the Great is a king, but he's always kind of looking over his shoulder at the Romans. So he's trying forever to show how great he is. And he has a look at the existing temple and says that's not sufficient. And he does two interesting things. First of all, you see there's a ridge here to the north of Mount Moriah. He slices it flat in order to build a platform. Platforms in the whole Roman world, that's the Temple Mount of today, on which he builds Herod's temple. Wait for you. Herod's temple. So a couple of things. First of all, the rabbis are going to say if you've never seen it, you've never seen a beautiful building in your life, which is interesting. I don't want to go into what they thought of Herod. Let's just quote Nero, an interesting quote, who says, "I'd rather be Herod's pig than his son," and we will leave it at that. Okay, Herod's temple, a couple of things. This is the sanctuary. The orientation of the temple is to the west. Okay? The holiest part of the temple is the inner part of the sanctuary. We call it the Holy of Holies. It's all the way in here. That's going to make a difference. Okay. Herod's temple. Is it going to last for more than 400 years like the first one? No, it's not, because in the year 66, the Jews rebel against Rome. And in 70, having conquered a great deal of the country, in come the Romans to Jerusalem. The rebels try to keep them out. We'll talk about that. But eventually, they destroy the city. They destroy the temple. They don't stop at that. They throw down stones of the Temple Mount along with it. Now, the Romans actually rebuild. One of the things they do is to stick a pagan temple on top of the Temple Mount, a temple to Jupiter. The Roman Empire is quite a long time. Who conquers them? We call them the early Muslim Empire. So you know what, we haven't done that. Let's have a look at the destruction. That's kind of what we end up with. Again, the Romans are going to rebuild. When the Romans are conquered, and it's a very long time later, they are conquered by the early Muslim Empire, and they build different things. Specifically, the Dome of the Rock, the Al-Aqsa, that's a whole different period of time. The early Arab Empire continues for several hundred years, and they're conquered by the Crusaders. Now, the Crusaders are more interested in the area, it's kind of over here, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre will become the Christian Quarter, but they have a presence on the Temple Mount, which we're going to talk about. The Crusaders are conquered twice. The first time by Saladin. Now, Saladin takes over the empire and rules out of Egypt, but then his descendants, who are called the Ayyubis, they get very involved with more waves of the Crusaders who keep coming in. And the bodyguard of the Muslim Empire doesn't like this. They don't like them working with what they call infidels. So what do? They take over the empire, and they rule out of Egypt. And then they come to Jerusalem. And you know what they have? You see all the destruction? Yeah. So they want to live at the level of the Dome of the Rock. The problem is there's all this destruction, so they have two choices. Either they can move it, or they can build over it, which is what they do. Arches and platforms, the Muslim Quarter of today. Okay. No, don't do that. Really, that's not helpful. Let's go back to that for a second. Sorry about that. It's a very sensitive screen, and it's very sensitive. Okay. What I want to show you, however, in addition to the Muslim Quarter, is this. What's outlined, that's the Western Wall of today. That's what remains. So that brings us to the question of why the Western Wall is so important. So, when the Romans destroyed the temple, you can see everything on top is pretty much gone, but what remains are the four retaining walls. You can see them all today, and they all exist. One of them is the closest to what was the Holy of Holies, which sits under the Dome of the Rock. It's the same place. Therefore, we have a tradition and a promise that says that the presence of God, what we call in Hebrew the Shekhinah, will never leave the Western Wall. From which we learn God's presence remains, the wall remains, the Jewish people remains. That's all we learn from that. What am I going to do with you today? So, we're going to be taking a walk to the Western Wall itself. We're going to follow it north, most of the way to the end. We have a water tunnel from the Maccabees for you, and then we have a pool from Herod's time. And then, at the request of your guide, and also what we often do, we're going to turn around and come back through the tunnels back to the entrance. Okay? A couple of things. First of all, you're welcome to ask questions. And number two, you can photograph what you want. What we ask is that if people are at prayer, travels by water. Now that was new information. Who's in charge at that point? The Ottomans, the Ottoman Empire. They work out that sewage and drinking water are mixing. People are getting sick and they got to do something. What do? They call for engineers from the British Army. And in comes Captain Charles Wilson. And Captain Charles Wilson, he's an engineer, eventually makes his way into the Muslim Quarter. And what does he find? Well, one of the things he turns up is this arch. Okay? It connects between a bridge and the Western Wall. And you can imagine him saying, wow, I just discovered ancient Jerusalem. This is the beginning of biblical archaeology. That's where it starts. Okay. What about the bridge? So the bridge went, and actually we're under the remains of it, so it still kind of exists, from the upper city, what's today the Jewish Quarter, to the Temple Mount. We think used by priests for two reasons. Number one, Jewish sources, what we call the Mishnah, the first book of the oral law, says that priests came from the West. And also, we found, when we think of their houses, if you've had a chance, in the Jewish quarter, the Herodian mansions of the Herodian quarter, very, very fancy houses, fresco, marble, really beautiful. They have their own ritual baths. So for a priest, which is what we think, to go into a ritual bath and go straight over the bridge is a very, very helpful way to get people to work on the Temple Mount already ready to start. Okay, the problem is that the rebels in the Great Revolt look at that bridge and say, oh my gosh, that's a way that the Romans are going to get to the temple. So they break it. Does it keep the Romans out? Well, we're going to find out at the end of our tour where they broke through. The Romans are going to rebuild it. And at some point it's widened, either during Second Temple times or later. You can see both of these are parts of that bridge. And that is a lot of talking. Does anybody have a question of anything that I've said, anything that I've talked about? Anything you have? We're just going to take a fast look and talk very, very briefly because there's a lot of time here. Okay, that's not a family, but we are in the period of time in the Jewish year where we deal with repentance. Doing prayers either early in the morning or late at night, depending on where you come from, called slichot or I'm sorry, basically, prayers to say we're sorry, to get into that season. So it's a very good name for a synagogue. Again, the arches are 1400s, the Mamelukes, those who are holding up the Muslim quarter. Service every day, and then on Saturdays it's open to the public for services at a little bit later hour. Let's head down. So let's come gather for a second. And I'm going to need 2 volunteers. Okay, somebody to walk a little bit that way and somebody to walk a little bit that way. Let's get everybody together. Who's going to do that? Who feels like taking a short walk, very short walk? Who's going to walk that way? You are? Okay, so off you go. I'll tell you where to stop. And that's pretty good. Stop right there. Who's going to do the same thing in the other direction? Okay. So watch me have people coming out, so let's go carefully. 2 there. Okay? Okay, so stop there. Now, come see how far apart these people are. We're going to try not to disturb the people, okay? They're quite far apart. That's because they're on 2 sides of one stone, the largest stone in the Western Wall. Okay, everybody see them? You guys come on back. Nobody can ever hear me from there, so come on back. Come on back. This stone is about 13.5 meters long and weighs about 570 metric tons. That's a nice number. Let's put some flesh on that. 100 African elephants or 2 fully loaded Boeing jet planes. That's what we're talking about. So our question is, what's it doing here? First of all, it's not the bottom. We looked down. The ritual bath was the floor below us. You can see stones below. It's also not bedrock. Okay, it was actually moved to here. Sides also done by hand. No cement in this wall, okay? Held by weight and good design. And something else hard to see here, but the stones don't lay one on top of each other. Each level goes back about 2 centimeters. We'll see it better as we go along. Why would you do that? So engineers tell us that it creates about a 12-degree angle, and that preserves the wall from earthquakes. Earthquakes. This is an earthquake belt. The Jordan Valley is a plate. It's the Syro-African Rift Valley, and it moves. Okay, we'll talk why people are moving from there in a moment. We'll talk about where they are. So we are waiting daily for our next earthquake. The last one was 100 years ago. That's about how far apart they are. But there's a second reason, or let's just let these gentlemen come out when they need to. They'll let you know. The second reason is kind of interesting. If you look straight up at a very, very tall building, according to a Roman architect named Vitruvius, it makes it feel as if it's going to come down on your head. It's a perspective problem. How do you solve it? You take it back from the eye gradually into a pyramid shape. Okay, we have a gentleman who's stuck with carrying stuff, so let's have a little bit of mercy on him. Okay, so those are two possibilities as to why the wall is built at an angle. Okay, very quickly, the Romans destroyed the temple. They threw down stones at the Temple Mount, I think a little heavy, but they did damage it. The border at the top is missing. The stone on the side is broken. The wall's been repaired. Actually, if you look at the plaza, you'll see it's been repaired a number of times, including all the way up until the 19th century, when those small stones at the top were put on by a family called the Montefiores, a very wealthy Jewish banking family. Who put these stones on? The early Muslim empire comes along, the first dynasty, the Umayyads. They repair the walls. They also built palaces to the south. I don't know if you'll get a chance to go to the Davidson excavations, but if you do, you can see one of the remains of one of the Umayyad palaces. Okay, that's a lot of talking. Questions? Yeah. What's that? See? So there's someone who knows how to look. And that a priest would have gone straight through to the Holy of Holies. Just ahead of me is the window to watch for.
Pinicturean mo.
There are not enough people for that to be everybody. We're good. How much work went into making that beautiful? Something special. Okay? That's only one of the reasons I brought you here. Let's look under our feet and see what we're standing on. This is a street or a courtyard from Second Temple times. Okay, I asked people who were standing here before, what doesn't belong? What do you say? What do you think doesn't belong here? Any ideas? The pillars is what most people say. The fans and the pillars. So that's what most people say. The problem is that those are Second Temple, but the rock between them is later. So let's see what's going on in this room. We have a couple of things that are strange. First of all, if I'm building the wall, and possibly a road, we'll talk in a second about what actually was here, why would I leave a big piece of rock there? That's strange. Also, if I'm building a square or a street and I have a beautiful paving stone, I would have used it. Seems like a bit of a waste. If there was a big stack of them, I would think, okay, so they made too many. But one? That's very strange. And then there's the pillars. But the pillars are unusual. We're used to seeing pillars that are a single piece and made of marble. First of all, these are local limestone, and they're not a single piece. Look. But this one, it's got something strange on it. How do you move pieces of the pillar? So with a whole pillar, you put ropes and you lift the whole thing and you put the whole thing in place. But when you have smaller pieces, you use a handle. Well, there you go, and there's a piece behind. So you drop them in place, but what would you do with the handles? We cut them off, and mostly they did, but this one they didn't, and the one behind it they didn't. Something very strange is going on in this room. So let's start with that, because that's the easy one. It's too dense, it's too hard. They tried to cut it open and were not successful. The Western Wall is going to come a little bit to the west and continue that way. We'll see it again carved into the bedrock. It's very interesting. Okay, but what about the stone from the street and what about the pillars? So what we think is that they didn't finish. What's the theory? The temple itself, in other words, the central structure takes about 3 years. The whole of the top of the Temple Mount, all the things going on there, take about 12 years. But that also leaves streets and walls, things like that. Herod dies in the year -4. As far as we know, the big projects that weren't finished stopped. So that's what we think about this room. Okay, but let's do a survey of where we've been. I'm going to do it from two sides. Here's our bridge. So we remember we sort of started out at the bridge. The great stones are in between. And here's our gate. Now again, if you could go straight back with where you are, we've continued up. What we're standing on is actually sort of a square. What did they find? They found this, which is a pool surrounded by pillars. It's not a pool to bathe or to drink. It's meant to be beautiful. The road then curved and came back to the west. Notice that there's a water channel and a fortress. We're going to talk about both of those. And now we're going to do this in the other direction, to those on that side. We started at the bridge. Again, our great stones are here, and here's our gate. Right across from the Holy of Holies, as we said. We continued up, and what we found here, behind here, is a pool. And the pillars. It was a pool to be beautiful. That was its idea. There was a square here. The road bends to the west. Water channel, we're going to see that, and there's a fortress there. Okay, questions? I haven't done that in a while. Okay, what we have now is a movie for you, I kind of promise. How did they cut and move stones in Second Temple times? How do I know? Well, there are all these science fiction theories about going back in time, but that's science fiction. We have to use sources. So let's see what we have. Josephus. Okay? Josephus is a Jewish priest. He is sent to the north to be the general in the rebellion in the Galilee. He is captured and enslaved. Eventually he's freed. He doesn't like the way the Romans look at the Jews, so he starts to write. The Jewish Wars covers the period from the Maccabee battles all the way up until the end of the Great Revolt, which he actually witnesses. Antiquities, the beginning of Jewish tradition all the way from creation. He writes quite a lot of things. That's Josephus. Remember our friend the architect who taught us about the angle of the wall? So he also left us with 10 volumes of descriptions of how you build things in the Roman Empire. So that's another way that we know. Okay, the movie is right next to us, left and up. Most people should go up the stairs. That's where most of the space is. The bottom step's a little high, so look out. At the end, there's room for like 6 or 7 people. At the bottom, no more. Okay? So let's head up to the movie. Again, up the stairs to the left. Look out for that. Okay. Up you go. I'm just going to stand on the side so I can the button. Up you go. You stand back, let the body. Okay? Everybody else, come on, let's come on up. There's not that much room down below, there's a little. Okay, and I want people who are, you can't do this, seriously. Okay. second screen, which these people see also, and I'm just going to push the button. You make sure you can see either up or down. Okay? Let me just sneak up here and push the button. What you're looking at here is a stone quarry.
Picture dito. Harap na. Harap. Blurred. Ganda dito.
Oo nga.
Ganda dito din. Oo nga. Oh, may tubig dito.
Oh, ito na yung tubig.
Madilas.
Yung ano na.
No, actually. That wasn't one of your notes. I know you want me to listen to you. Oh, yes, and this thing was a case stuff. And that one,